My name is Howard Gee. Welcome to this celebration of life and of the legacy of our dear departed friend, Torre Houlgate-West. On behalf of Lawrence Houlgate, we thank you for coming today. Larry wasn't sure how many would be here, how many we could expect, but I know he treasures the presence of each of you, so thank you. What you've been hearing is the types of music that Torre enjoyed and relaxed to while she was listening. And that leads me to say that you should turn your phones off because ringtones were not one of her favorite types of music. If you haven't got your phone off, please do. A couple of days ago at the bridge table, someone's phone went off in a real quiet moment, and the ringtone was Pretty Woman. I didn't see who went to go answer the phone, but it was got some chuckles. One more of the hazards of live performance. As you can see from the program, we are here with a variety of folks, and these are people who Torre has touched their lives, and she had an impact on our community. These folks who will be speaking today knew her well. Larry will speak last, and after that planned part, we'd like to take the time, if there's any others of you would like to share or speak or tell a story about Torre, we'll take some time to do that, and then we can have more drinks and continue to chat about her and our memories. Torre lived in several worlds in San Luis Obispo County. By this I mean she was devoted to many varied interests and activities, and she would get immersed in making the most of those experiences. They became a very important world for her. She was a core figure in the world of poetry, and the world of politics, and the world of bridge and Scrabble, and the world of music. She was an organizer, and an activist, and a teacher, and a role model, and a mother, and a wife. Art and creativity were her core. In her over 50 years as a resident of San Luis Obispo County, she impacted the lives of countless people. Of course, many of the people whose lives she touched are gone, and we can't hear from them about how important she was in their lives. I knew Torre for over 40 years, and yet I only knew a few of the worlds that she influenced locally. Both my wife and I have treasured our interactions with Torre and Larry. Torre was a smiling, intelligent, and wise part of the many occasions that we were together, and she is very much missed. For me, Torre was a friend and a mentor. She was one of my mentors and teachers in the Duplicate Bridge program for over 30 years. She was someone who loved singing and sharing music with friends. She was a spontaneous and creative person. She might, on a whim, travel to Chautauqua in the eastern USA and then come back and organize a poetry and book reading event. I remember one time, with her encouragement, I was one of the many readers who took turns reading out loud in a garden nook across from the Slow Mission the entire book, Travels with Charlie, by John Steinbeck. I wish I'd known Torre as a young woman. Just looking at these photographs of her, you can see her vitality and her beauty. Like that photo when she was much younger, that classic hippie chick that everybody was instantly in love with back in the 1960s. In the photos, you can see the energy and the youthful joy that is so much a part of her. And in the other photos, you can see the years falling gracefully on her shoulders. Before I go much further, I wanted to thank, on Larry's behalf, Justin McMillan for helping set up today. Thanks for your strong arms, as always. It was here at the Dallidet Adobe that Torre celebrated her 80th birthday. which was shortly before the pandemic when it halted most other gatherings. And it's always been a special place for her here. Perhaps that's enough for me for now. I would like to ask Brett Knupfer from Paso Robles Democratic Club. Please come forward. For Brett and for anybody singing up here, or speaking, I ask that you speak closely into the mic.
Okay.
This is not an extremely sensitive system. Okay? Thank you.
Over there?
Yeah, if you want to hold it, you can.
Oh, there you go. Thank you. My name is Brett Knupfer, and I live in Paso Robles. I can't hear already, huh? Hopefully that'll be better. Okay. My name is Brett Knupfer, and I live in Paso Robles, and I'm a member of the Paso Robles Democratic Club Executive Committee. It is through my work in the Democratic Club that I became acquainted with both Larry and Torre. Torre and Larry have been members of the Democratic Party and the various clubs around for many years. My relationship with Larry, I know, will continue on. But my relationship with Torre was cut short, sadly. I haven't known her for long, just over a year. And my acquaintance with Torre began last year when she sent an email to the Democratic Club suggesting that we start an annual Community Service Award in honor of our former mayor, Steve Martin, who was a lone Democrat. And if you all know Paso Robles, it's like sort of a ranch town. It's changing, but it's been very conservative for a long time. But he was a lone Democrat serving on the city council. And he was very effective in bringing people together, disparate people, in common purpose for the good of the city. And often these people were not necessarily inclined to seeing themselves as working with other people who they may have viewed as not really being in their partnership set. They would be different. But Mayor Martin was really effective in bringing these people together for the good of the town. And sadly, he had passed away. And Torre felt that he should really be honored for his work. And the way that she felt we could honor him was by establishing a community service award in his name. And she also, after contacting us, put up right up front a sizable amount of money to get this whole project started. Well, I took this idea to the executive committee, and we recognized right away the rightness of her idea and how valuable it could be to our city as a tool for bringing people together and for encouraging our leaders to actually work together, because that hasn't been happening for a while. We met with Mayor Martin's widow, Jennifer. We talked about Torre's idea with her. She became very excited about it and very supportive of it. We formed a committee. We held meetings at Larry and Torre's house and developed criteria for the award and a process for collecting nominations and giving out the award. We announced it to the city council and set out announcements and started receiving nominations. Torre's idea was up and running, but Torre had tragically suffered another stroke and had to curtail her work, her direct work with our committee. But we kept on, and we were able to give the first Steve Martin Community Service Award in December of last year. It was awarded to a woman by the name of Yesenia Echeverria, who's a co-founder of the brilliant group, or you may have heard of them, Mujeres de Acción. And we are currently seeking nominations for the second annual Steve Martin Community Service Award. Torre's idea is carrying on today. I have also talked with others about Torre's political work, both in San Luis Obispo and in Paso Robles. And I know many of you know Torre from her work here. She has been very active, pushing ahead, often leading the way. For instance, it was Torre who established the first political outdoor stand at the San Luis Obispo Farmers Market. I think that was 42 years ago. If I'm right, that would be back in 1983, which to me doesn't seem that long ago. But it was, my God, it was 42 years ago. She got the idea when she heard that Higuera Street, or I guess Higuera Street, however, that Higuera Street was going to be closed to traffic on Thursday night, and Torre, being Torre, rushed to grab a folding table, a folding chair, put together a sign, and hurried down so she could talk to people about the Democratic Party. Not too much later, she asked a Cal Poly student, whose name I have not been able to find, to help her by building a sturdy stand for the signs and banners and a more ample presentation at the farmer's market, and boom, that's how you do it. The table's there, and that's how Torre did it. Other accomplishments of Torre include co-establishing the first permanent year-round San Luis Obispo Democratic Party headquarters. Torre contacted and convinced the owner of the two-story Sour Adams Adobe right down on Torre Street between Palm and Monterey to rent a downstairs office to the party. It was a great place for the office with its central location and its large glass windows looking right out on Torre Street. And just before opening the office, Torre got up on a ladder and put up the great big Democratic Party banner right across the front of the building. And those, no doubt, that is how you do it. Torre showing everybody. She was also the co-chair of the county central committee from 1998 to 99, and Larry was the co-chair with her. Certainly a partnership in many ways, and a very effective partnership. And as a part of my reaching out to other people who have known Torre, I was able to contact Bud Zeusner. Anybody know Bud?
Oh, yeah.
I was able to contact him. And I have not had the pleasure of meeting with him personally, though, because he's in London currently, and he can't be here today. He'll be back next week. But when I asked Bud about Torre's work, he responded this way, and I quote, "Yes, Torre and Larry were like a bedrock foundation to the DCC for many years, including 2 as chairs. Torre was a champion of labor, women's rights, the environment, and more, and would always be counted on to be a voice for progressive stances on the many issues we dealt with. She did not suffer any injustice done to anyone lightly, and would not rest in her pursuit of fairness and equity. She was straightforward, often blunt, and sometimes rubbed people the wrong way, especially the people who needed to be rubbed the wrong way. So, many people have benefited from her steadfast efforts, most of whom are unaware of the great debt we owe her for the determined pushing of the progressive agenda in our local area, statewide and nationally. All I can do is add my, quote, thank you, well done." And for me, myself, I just can add on to that, yes. Thank you, Torre. Very well done.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you for your insight. Obviously, Torre made a difference, as we hope we all do in life. Larry told me that there was another way that Torre quietly made a difference in many lives. I didn't know about this. For nearly 10 years, she volunteered 2 or 3 nights a week at Cuesta College, teaching English as a second language to those who needed the assistance. Who they were, where they are now, nobody knows, but I'm sure they know and remember her impact on their lives. Next up, we're going to hear from Kevin Sullivan, who was part of Torre's world of writing and poetry. Come on up, Kevin. He'll tell you more about their connections through the California Quarterly and the Slow Poetry Group.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Patrick Sullivan. Can you hear me out there?
No.
Closer to the mic.
Now, how's that? All right. I met Torre at the first poetry reading I went to, and it was at the dark room. It was an open reading, and now, you know, that was a long time ago. She was a friend for poetry. Torre read at the first poetry festival, and she continued to read at many of them. You know, I am the co-founder of the San Luis Obispo, co-founder of the San Luis Obispo Poetry Festival, and ran the Corners of the Mouth for at Linnea's Cafe. And so Torre read there. In fact, Torre gave the last reading I saw her was at San Luis Obispo Library, and we had the scroll of Kerouac there, and so she read with a friend at the San Luis Obispo Library at the Stacks. Anyway, so she was yeah. The poem I'm going to read of Torre's epitomizes Torre's grit and determination to accomplish what she wants to do. Irish memories, broken but intact. Land clashes with sea as cliffs of moor rear preceptuously from shock rocks to soft top, where signs warn tourists that grassline paths may simply disappear. No place for an acrophobe, thought at home. I sang ballads of more, longing to be here. Near the edge, harpists and fiddlers entertain, and I try to listen, but a fresh vision of the cliff's face looms, a specter that marks my heart, pound and my hands wet. Filled by my fear, I depart to wander down toward sunny Doolin, a nice flat little town where the sharpest fall offered is from a bar stool in a pub. No footpath winds to Doolin, so I hung the verge of a one-lane road lined with briars and stinging nettles, fenced from pastures and barbed wires. Diesel coaches dominate the macadam, pushing me wayside. Kerchief covering my nose, I avert my face when they roar by. Dodging one, I stumble to my knees in a benign stretch of grass and tansy. From a bed of shamrocks glints the facet of the surface of a shattered mirror, large as a photographer's portrait, broken into many pieces, but still intact, as though held together by some membrane. The glass reflects bright blue sky, green and yellow dandelions, leaning over it and me, or at least parts of me. One eye repeats many times. My hair, lifted by a breeze, drifts like a cloud over refracted sun. Why this mirror here on a roadside rarely walked? Difficult to not regard it as an omen, bad luck mirror nested in good luck shamrocks. I bend close, an isolated lizard eye, no mirrors for years, wrinkles, sun bright stark. No gauze softened this focus on the clutch marks age has left on my visage. Examining my image, I wonder how I came to be so old, and yet so cowardly. Fleeing an imagined fall, I meant to be wise and able in my maturity. Hard truth on this narrow road. As sea blinks a far field away and cars whoosh by. The cliffs took my breath, sucked up thin courage and spat me out on the road to Doolin. Braving traffic, I was driven to a revelation. There are mirrors everywhere. look away, and one day you find yourself on your knees, your true face stirring up from the grass. Standing, I breathed deeply and began to climb the steps, the steep grade, back to challenge my fear, back to the cliffs of Moore. Torre Houlgate-West.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. Diane, our next speaker is Diane Souza. We'd enjoy hearing from you. Diane, I believe, was a poet laureate for the San Luis Obispo County. So, please.
Thank you. May I use that? Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I've recently lost a few friends whom I didn't see as often as I would have liked or should have, but whose brilliance filled my life with their art, intelligence, and undeniable luminosity. Torre was the best and most beautifully powerful of these friends. She looked like Joni Mitchell, but walked the earth like a Valkyrie. She didn't need a sword or a cape cut from lightning, though she could have pulled off both with great swagger and flair. I was very fortunate in my early years to have Torre as a mentor who believed in my work and generously did what she could to help me get it on the page and bring it to the world. We may imagine the art of poetry as a one-woman gig, but it is not. A poet needs her community to tell her the hard truths, to ground her, lift her, keep her going. Torre took my hand and introduced me to my community, without which I would have been abjectly lost. But I never said it enough to her. Thank you, my dear Torre. I'm honored today to read her dramatically masterful, but unfortunately still timely poem, Interview Long After the Invasion. Our tea was cold, opalescent on the surface in our fragile cups, when truth began to seep through her structured phrases. She spoke slowly, sentences incidentally punctuated by the tick of the mantel clock. As I told you when you first came to inquire, I know nothing of war. Yes, I was here when the village was invaded. We were innocents, muddling along in our careful country way. They came with casual violence. We hardly knew what to do, far better prepared for greeting friends or relatives than an enemy. Some hid, others went about as though, we all knew something had happened. Shadows everywhere seemed ominous. Most of them thundered at our doors. A few, well-reared, knocked politely, asked for food. Others swept aside propriety and decency. Their guttural demands stripped us of our privacy. No home was untouched. Yes, they were here, in this house. But that's all past. This cottage has stood 400 years. All its inhabitants are transient by nature. What does it matter if strangers entered and later left? The tea was cold. Leaded windows broke waning light into an ordered, ancient pattern. Shadows slid evenly across the faded rug. A door slam jarred the quiet. With a small, sharp intake of air, the woman turned to the parlor entry, her face quickly altering from surprise to welcome, as a young man appeared clad in a military uniform. "Hello, Mother," he smiled. Home early this time. She rose to take his hand. "My son." We murmured politenesses. He went upstairs, perhaps to change his clothing. She stood, hands clasped neatly at her waist, and aligned her spine in subtle adjustment. Each vertebrae shifted slightly to contribute to an iron column, marble face, tranquil. There's really very little I can tell you. They were here. That was 20 years ago. It is over. The invasion is long past. Now we are at peace. Silence crept from the thick cottage walls. The clock ticked patiently. Above, the occasional snap and scuff of her son dressing. "I'm sorry I can't help you more," she said, taut skin translucent on the hand firmly opening the door. "But, as I said, I know nothing of war."
Thank you, Diane. Thank you for sharing those powerful words. The next presenter on our list is Lillian Brown of the North County Writers Group. Torre wrote in more styles than just poetry, and her generous spirit led her to meet and help other writers in various genres. Lillian, please share.
Hi, I'm Lillian Brown. I coordinate can you hear me now? Yeah, okay. I coordinate a critique group, the North County Critique Writers Group, that's through Slow Night Writers. And Tori started coming to meet with us. We meet twice a month at the Atascadero Library in the conference room upstairs. And she became familiar with us through Slow Night Writers. She used to attend our sessions and sometimes brought along her philosopher husband, who also wrote more technical things. And at first she would share her poetry with us, but the members of this group primarily write fiction and memoir, and we weren't really comfortable critiquing poetry. We enjoyed listening to it, and people occasionally do bring poetry, but she adapted pretty quickly and started sharing short stories with us. And they were always, I have always felt like I learned something new with her short stories. They were informative and rather intellectual and on varied topics. Even sometimes I would just learn new vocabulary words from her pieces. There was and still is, as I go through her things, this intellectual quality to her writing. And she had an appreciation of knowledge in many fields that was evident in her work. And sometimes they would go on very interesting sidelines. There was a story that she brought about a judging of an international Irish music competition, because she was very involved with music, I now learn too. And it was called, this Irish festival thing was called a flacool, I think is how you say it. And the story involved all these supernatural occurrences that happened during the event. Then she wrote mysteries. She wrote one about a gardener and an elderly couple and a large dog, and I never got to hear the conclusion to that, which I would have liked to have known, because we meet and we go and we review things sometimes in pieces. We don't like to have too lengthy of a presentation, because there are 8 members of us, and sometimes we don't want to get bogged down in pages and pages of things, so we'll do it in sections. One particular story that I was reminded of recently involved a legal dilemma with about a thoroughbred foal, a thoroughbred horse, that was sired illegitimately by a famous racehorse when the mare in a neighboring stable in heat broke out of the barn. And Torre went into this whole description of things, and the impact, the emotional impact it had on the young girl who owned the mare. And the question came about who the legal owner would be of the resulting baby horse. Did he belong to the young girl who owned the mare, or did he belong to the stallion's owner? It was a good question, and we had lots of discussions about it. And she did some research on it too. But this was the type of things, her inquisitive mind was always coming up with very interesting plots and topics. Torre and Larry also shared some stories of their adventures from their trips abroad and when they lived abroad too. Many of them were written by Larry, I think with a lot of input from Torre, and they included tales of bungee jumping, an overturned canoe, and a desperate swim to shore, among other of their exploits. Torre was a gifted poet, an excellent storyteller, who brought a wealth of knowledge and technical expertise to our writers group. She provided consistent, helpful feedback on everyone's work and served as the last word, kind of the acknowledged expert on grammar, spelling, and punctuation for the group. She and Larry delighted us with anecdotes from their world travels and experiences through their stories, and we will all miss her fun ways and welcoming smile.
Thank you. And now we have a very unique presenter, Torre's nephew, who is also very familiar with her writing, particularly from before the turn of the millennium. Please welcome James Dexter Lee. In particular, I think he has some interesting information about Torre and the Central Coast radio players.
Monday evening at 6:45, tune in for another presentation by the Central Coast Radio Players, an original radio play by Torre West titled What's It All About? Improbable Notes from a Sex Therapist's Casebook. A farcical look at the pressures of modern love life that asks the question, is variety the spice of life? 41 years ago, in early 1984, Torre created the Central Coast Radio Players, which aired on Central Coast Public Radio KCBX. For 2 years, live radio theater was broadcast on KCBX, which Torre wrote, directed, and even acted in under the name T.C. West. She made a call out to Central Coast actors, writers, and directors, and 26 people showed up to help. She interviewed each of them, making notes like, quote, talented, good ad lib, director, good actor, and writer, director, actor. Another list shows 75 people volunteering to be part of the radio plays. It was a local sensation. Torre wrote about the political and the everyday, science fiction and fantasy, sex, and yes, death. Always, however, with a wry eye to the gods of humor. Take, for instance, this short excerpt from The Last Act about a famous actor, Grant, who finds out from his doctor that he has terminal cancer. He doesn't want to tell his family, including his wife Mimsy, about it, however. Mimsy. Grant, what are you not telling me? Is that another woman? Grant. Of course not. Mimsy. Why, of course not? It happens all the time. Do you want to ask me for a divorce? Grant. Never. Mimsy. So, it's over? This thing with you and the other woman? And you want to be forgiven? Grant. No, I mean, look. There's no other woman, I swear it. Mimsy. Then what is it? Grant. Nothing. All of her work, whether a reflection on life and death or sex and love, carries this humor. She once convinced Larry and I to wear trash bags over our heads as we read a script live down in Avila Beach near the gates of Diablo Canyon about two doltish aliens who have come to Earth in the hopes of not conquering it, but to make sure that the humans continue to build and proliferate nuclear power stations because radioactive waste was their main food source. She was always dipping into speculative fiction, as is shown in the radio play Lita's Dream, which was presented over the air in 2010, but possibly originally scripted earlier, given the paper that it was written on, with some modifications for the later script. It mixes mythology with speculation in the genetic future of mankind. Lita, a human, is lusted after by the god Zeus, gives birth to two children born from eggs. They are half mortal, one of whom grows up to be Helen of Troy, a great beauty. Troy seizes on this to show that, quote, what seems grotesque and unlikely in myth is now something we can imagine happening as a result of genetic engineering. In 2010, when the play was produced, Torre writes that, quote, some scientists are already fooling around with mixing human blood and bovine genetic material, perhaps trying to reproduce real cowboys. And whatever mixes may be attempted in the future is anyone's guess. Unfortunately, we only have a few scripts from the many plays. And although there may be hiding in someone's attic recordings of these plays, we don't have them. If anyone does, let us know. In 1986, Torre's friend and collaborator Ralph Rana, who expertly operated the soundboard for the plays and also wrote, directed, and acted himself, took part in the Walk Across America, a coast-to-coast walk by hundreds of anti-nuclear activists protesting the continued proliferation of nuclear weapons. Torre used the Central Coast radio player's airtime to interview Ralph every week. Allegedly, when the station manager heard about this, he closed the program down. Torre went on to build her craft to writing, directing, and acting by attending several annual National Audio Theater festivals in Missouri, where she honed her skills with the likes of Riders in the Sky Radio, the Fireside Theater, Bill Chessman, and Tony Brewer. Torre always supported audio arts and sent me to the National Audio Theater festivals one year, a truly memorable experience. And I know that Torre would want you to know that NATF's next evolution, the Pringle Midwest Audio Fictional Revival, continues its work educating, promoting, and performing live radio theater.
Thank you, James. Thank you. Torre was certainly an interesting and creative part of our county. At this time, I want to bring to your attention another more recent product of her creativity. You may have noticed the table filled with ceramic masks. Torre began working with clay just a few years ago and created all of these pieces, which she called enigmatic faces, hoping that you, the viewer, would find and decide the expression on each face rather than her telling you or naming the face. I won't get political at this point, although she might have. Larry has asked that each of you look at the faces and find one that speaks somehow to you and that you take it as a memento of Torre. This is a gift freely given from his heart to you in celebration of Torre. Now we have another presentation for you. Next on our list is my wife, Mary Sue Gee. For a number of years, Torre took singing lessons from my wife and sang in many studio recitals and sang in the St. Stephen's Episcopal Church Choir in San Luis Obispo.
I knew Torre from a different world, from the world of music. Everybody can hear me okay? Is this... Torre came to me and she had a love of singing, and so we sang lots of songs that she liked, and I will tell this little story because I think it's fun. At one of the recitals, over the years I've had 2 recitals per year for my clients, where they stand up and sing something by memory and try not to freeze or faint on the stage. And so one time Torre was singing, I think she was singing Where or When, which you may be familiar with, Broadway tune. And after you sing through this, there's a piano break, or we call it a dance break. And so I mentioned that to her, and she said, well, what am I supposed to do? I said, well, you could dance if you want to, or just stand there, whatever. So at recital, I was very surprised, but she had Larry to sit on the front row, and when the dance break came, he got up and danced with her, which was a really high point in the recital. So that's our funny story for that one. I've chosen to sing a song from Rodgers and Hart, from the Broadway musical genre. It's something you may or may not be familiar with. It's called You're Nearer, and we're going to give it a shot. Are you going to be on sing just in case?
Stand right here, ready.
Okay.
Dear
Thank you, Mary Sue. Thank you.
He's colorful.
Now I'd like to ask Bill Donovan to come forward. Bill is often my partner at the bridge table, and for years he and Torre were partners at the table and leaders in the world of duplicate bridge in SLO County. Thank you, Bill.
Howdy, I noticed there weren't very many bridge players here, which sort of surprised me, but anyhow, I won't get technical about it. Talking about bridge, we're talking specifically about duplicate bridge or competitive bridge, tournament style
Did you
bridge.
switch it off?
Oh, I did.
Torre was a high impact player. Is that on?
No.
Hi, Torre was a high impact player and competitor, a gold life master, which is getting way up there, over 2,500 master points, ranked 18th in the county out of 491. She was an avid teacher, always trying to help newer players improve their game. In fact, that's how I first met Torre when I moved to the area after I retired, and then I met her maybe 15 or so years ago, and she was teaching before a duplicate bridge game, and I was relatively new to competitive bridge and found her lessons very valuable, and she was a very giving and generous player in terms of trying to bring people along. And she apparently took me on as a project at some point because we frequently played together on Wednesday nights when we had an evening game. And one particular game comes to mind that exemplifies how good Torre was. And that was, before the game, she talked to me about a convention called Mini Roman, and I won't get into the details of it, but suggested that we try playing it, and I was a little familiar with it and had kind of discarded the notion of playing it because the kind of hand where that would come up was relatively rare. Well, that evening, we had 4 hands where that was appropriate, and every one of them I screwed up in a different way. And through all of it, Torre kept her cool and never was instructive about it later, but never was a partner that harped on you or anything like that. She was just really good that way. She was also an avid promoter of the game, very welcoming to everyone, except players who made others uncomfortable. And through that, what came to my mind is that when I first started, when I played bridge since I was 15, but it was as an adult, working adult, somebody that I worked with said there's a duplicate game up the street shortly after work. Would you like to try it sometime? And I said okay, and we played, and this was 50-some years ago, and I found the people to be rude and obnoxious and very unwelcoming, and it really turned me off from the game of duplicate bridge. And I sort of thought, I have enough hassles at work. I don't need this, in my free time. So I stopped playing until I was probably 60 years old, and I found out about, when I was still working, I found out about a group of people who played duplicate style bridge, but it wasn't a sanctioned game, and there wasn't the pressure to be perfect and such. But anyhow, none of these people were in the rude or obnoxious category, and so I was a little heartened by it. And so after I retired and decided to pick it up again, I was surprised that ACBL, the organization that sponsors duplicate bridge, had instituted a thing called zero tolerance, where rude and obnoxious behavior at the table was not allowed, and people would be kicked. And I have heard that Torre was very instrumental in getting zero tolerance pushed through, especially on the local level. And it has made a huge difference. And if you've ever thought about playing bridge, you know, be welcome, because you won't find rude and obnoxious people at the table these days.
Thank you, Bill. So yes, duplicate bridge is pretty competitive. And I noticed on the table the little Scrabble tiles.
Yeah.
That was another competitive activity for Tori. She would go to tournaments, and I'm glad you mentioned she was the spelling judge for your writers group. Larry is going to come up now and share some things with us that I hope you will find to be profound, I'm sure philosophical, and intimate and memorable for us all.
I hope not philosophical. Can you all hear me? Yes. Okay, all right. Anyway, good afternoon, and thanks for coming to this beautiful garden for our celebration of life for Tori, the love of my life. And thanks also to my friend Howard Gee and the work he did, helping me put on this celebration and acting as our master of ceremonies at the same time. When Howard and I discussed whether I should have a celebration of life for Tori, I remember telling Howard that Tori and I had attended a few such celebrations in and around this county. And one day while driving home, Tori and I talked about celebrations for life. I asked Tori if she would want a celebration if she predeceased me. She sighed and said, quote, "Larry, I don't care. I won't be there." Simple logic, and it rhymes at the same time. We both started laughing, and I thought that would be the end of our conversation about celebrations of life. Well, it was almost the end. As a philosopher, I couldn't help continuing the discussion. I saw an opening. I told Tori that Socrates, in the death scene of Plato's dialogue called the Phaedo, and I'm sure most of you have read that, is essentially what Tori said. Namely, I don't care, I won't be there. I told Tori in the car as we were driving along that Crito, one of Socrates' friends, visiting him in jail, asked Socrates how he wanted his body disposed after his death. And Socrates despairingly tells Crito, "I'll say again that I don't care what you do with the body. Burn the corpse or bury it. It won't be me." Tori, after I said this, smiling of course that I'd really done something great, Tori stared at me and with her beautiful smile said, "Larry, do you have to philosophize everything?" She had a great sense of humor. I know because she always laughed at my stupid jokes. And she knew how to make people laugh. Another example of this skill occurred at the Coalesced bookstore in Morro Bay. I'm sure a lot of you know this bookstore. It was at late 2017. Tori was invited to be the lead-off poet that evening, reading about 6 of her poems. The MC asked Tori to introduce herself to the audience before reading her poems. And Tori agreed, "Okay, I'll do that." And here's what she said. Quote, "Born 80 years ago and about 50 days ago, I was delivered by a doctor whose name was Royal Pain." No kidding. Royal Pain. My father couldn't afford the obstetrician's bill, so he paid for my birth with his almost new set of golf clubs. I had early lessons in irony and humor. And here's a part of what she said, the rest of it now. She said, "Fast forward past 2 failed marriages and up to the present one, to the best spouse in the world. I've now arrived at a peaceful, fruitful time little troubles me these days. 7 years later, Torre wrote her last poem, written on Valentine's Day in February 2024. The harm and cruel of dementia had already set in. She could barely write anything. I did most of her writing by dictation, but she wouldn't do that anymore for this poem. She struggled, and she finally wrote the poem herself in letters that are so tiny that I had to enlarge them so we could read it here. And it, by the way, it's in your program that each of you have. So the poem I'm talking about is in that leaflet. The original is right here. I've got it with me. That's where she wrote it. It was on this piece of paper. And the poem itself is encased in the heart that she drew around it. So, I'm going to read this out loud. I would give you my heart, though I have but one. If you needed to live, I would give you my heart. But there's no point. You have it already, and I have but one. Don't worry, by the way, that I have only one heart, because as long as you are near, you are my heart. I know, it makes me cry too, whenever I say that poem. If you can see the red color of Torre's hand-drawn heart, then you look outside the drawing, down here. I'll put this on the table later. And she wrote this in large words, which really surprised me. And it says, I believe in recycling. I'm sorry. Before you ask, what does recycling have to do with my heart? Remember that Torre's early lessons were in irony and humor. And I'm going to leave that to you. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Okay, we're done with the organized part of our celebration here. At this point, if there's any of you who have any memories you want to share, comments you'd like to make, I want to thank Craig Updegrove for being here, and he's videotaping this to make it available for family and relatives and friends who could not be here today. We won't ask you to come up here, but just to stand where you are, and we'll come a little closer, speak loudly, and maybe start with your name. So if anyone has anything, who'd like to start off, please? Anyone? James.
There really is so much about Torre's life that I want to talk about, but we don't have a lot of time.
You want to go up to the mic?
Do you want to? Sure. So I basically decided to write a poem for Torre, and originally it was going to be several pages long, going over my whole life with her, which is my whole life with Torre. She was really, in many ways, okay, I'm going to get through this. A second mother. And so I'm just going to read this poem. It's called, okay, I am going to get through this. It's called Aunt Torre. Aunt Torre, I haven't called you that in almost half a century, but you were always Aunt Torre. Growing up in the gray suburban freeway-scape of Los Angeles, you would show up in your red Volkswagen bus, and off we'd go, north. Up the wide Pacific coast, up Highway 1, El Camino Real, 101, up to Santa Barbara, up to San Luis Obispo, up to Morro Bay, Cambria, San Simeon, the castle in the Brown Hills, up to Carmel and magical Monterey Bay, up further to Santa Cruz, San Francisco. You showed me planetarium stars in Golden Gate Park, a merry-go-round carousel of images, a kaleidoscope of characters, actors, musicians, writers, artists like you. You introduced me to Shel Silverstein, Maurice Sendak, and Norton Juster. Not really to them, but to the lands of their minds. To those other realities, replete with phantom toll booths and wild things, like breaking surf on a rocky shore, in a neverland of blue sky and green ocean, or a fairy tale in a land of oak without oaks, or a pancake breakfast in a foggy Richmond district street, where St. Ignatius's dome chapel faded in and out to redwood silences. Far beyond cathedrals, reaching to heaven, Aunt Torre my Aunt Torre, my oldest friend, my road companion. Bon voyage, good traveling to the next destination.
Anyone else like to come up, please? Anybody else something to share?
I will stand up in place because I have a loud voice. Without Torre, I would have been homeless many times over. She had pity on my desire to live on slender means as a ne'er-do-well. And I wrote this poem for her. It's not a good poem, but it's a short poem. It's on the back of a Miheng-Lo receipt, so it couldn't be very long. And the title is almost as long as the poem, On the Random Carom of Kindness in an Always Falling World. Like our cruel, careless, and heartless acts, our kindnesses survive us, their origin obvious, but descent unknown. And I just want to mention one thing, which I'm going from here to my fencing club. Torre gave me Josh's equipment to use, and I have a fabulous 22-year-old fencer who uses it to the joy of her life, if you could see her expression. So thank you, Torre. Thank you, Larry.
Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Tina. Torre was obviously a brilliant and multifaceted human. Her role in my life is more reflective of her philanthropic side. I met Torre and Larry through my sister about 18 years ago. It was 13 years ago that her impact on my life was the strongest. I had, for many years, struggled with some fairly debilitating vices that prevented me from making any progress in life. I was stuck in a vicious cycle. At that time, 13 years ago, I came to a point in my life where I was ready, willing, and committed to make a lasting change. Torre graciously allowed me to live in the granny cottage behind their lovely home on Peach Street. With that stability that that home provided, I was able to begin setting goals and focus on the next steps for my new life. With her guidance, I started building the strong foundation that I stand on to this very day. Torre was an example to me of a strong, brave, committed, accomplished woman. She encouraged me to read thoughtful books, to go to museums, and to pursue my creative interests. I was just learning how to be a contributing member of society. And when faced with difficult situations, I would often ask myself, what would Torre do? When I was ready to embark on my new life, Torre helped me get into my very first own place. She came with me to look at the apartment. She gave me the emotional support that I didn't have within my own family at the time. Torre gifted me with a lovely print of a painting that has a woman with some flowers, and it has the words on it, "One day she woke up and decided to trust life." And it perfectly embodied the changes that I was making at that time, and it touched me very deeply. Today I work at a nonprofit agency with people who are going through a lot of the stuff that I struggled with, and I proudly have that painting hanging on the wall in my office. When I was at a very low point in my life, like a child learning to crawl, Torre reached down and took my hand and taught me how to walk. I am forever grateful for the lasting impact she has left in my life and my heart.
Another beautiful story. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else?
Yeah, my name is John, and I've known Larry for 70 years. What I show you? Everybody knows Larry's a philosopher, and he was especially riveted on the ones that I cared about as a young man. And that is, how do you know if your life has any meaning? Really, everybody wants happiness. We all want that one. But is there meaning in your life? And I remember Larry and I discussed this, and he has been talking in a wonderful way. You know your life has meaning if in your life you have either alleviated suffering or offered beauty. Torre's life, Larry, they offer beauty, they alleviate suffering. Those are lives of meaning. I do know Torre and Larry well enough to know they could be fierce enemies, ferocious, but they have another quality. They both love you the most when you think you deserve it the least. That's the life.
Anybody else? Look around a nice crowd. Anybody else?
I suppose, Howard, I'll have to say something here, because Larry and Torre and I first got to know each other 40 years ago, not as long as you have, Jim, but 40 years is a long time, too. I think I got to know them first when I was chair of the Democratic Central Committee here. If you ever want to have an experience where you can experience, where you can really sense those fierce qualities that Torre had in abundance, that was the setting. She was not one to suffer fools gladly. And I probably was fairly foolish even on taking on that assignment. But we made fast friends, and of course, every time that I had a request from the community to support me in one of my 4 campaigns for office, too, as early as 1992 and 94, they were there, and I could count on them, not only just to write checks, but to be there, to be encouraging, to be reminding me of what an obligation we have. And I think to answer that question about whether your life has meaning, all you need to do is look around among the community that is gathered here to remember her and know that connection that she provided to us. And I think it is in connecting with our community, with people who can commit to us, and like Tina said, help us out of the ruts of our depression. And we've had lots of those ruts, haven't we? All of us. And we're in one right now, aren't we? Don't I wish that Torre were able to be here to give us the counsel that I know she would give. I hope I can be just half as effective as she was in supplying that basic grounding, that truth, that balance, that calmness, that compassion that I knew was at the heart of her motivation. We'll miss her. Thankfully, we still have Lawrence here. And I intend to get the most out of him in whatever years we have remaining to us. But I want to thank you too, Howard, for helping gather us here together.
Thank you, John.
Anybody else out there? Sure.
Hi, my name is Rose. Sorry, I don't have anything prepared, just some kind of loose notes. I first met Torre about 20 years ago when her son Josh quietly moved me into their cottage in the back. I was there for about a year and a half. Anyway, Torre taught me so much about the basics of life. I think James said that it felt like she was a second mother, and I think she was like that for a lot of us. My sister was up here a minute ago, and we didn't have that, motherly figure that would teach you just the next right step, and she did that for me. She once got me an Emily Post etiquette book, because I needed it. We had a good laugh about it, but I read it, and we talked about it, and I would ask her questions about it. She used to take me on trips for fun and enrichment. We would go to San Francisco, go to museums, art shows. She would buy me any book that I wanted. She was really, encouraging as far as reading. And later on, when I had my first child, she always wanted to make sure that I read to her. And I did, and now she loves books too. She would support any interests that my daughter had. She's almost 13 now. This is when she was a toddler, up to 4 years old. If she wanted to play soccer, Torre was on it. If she wanted to do gymnastics, all we had to do was let her know, and she would make it happen. She was very, very generous. Torre had a mind like a steel trap, and I always hoped that I could just have a fraction of her wit and intelligence, and I just always felt like I want to be like her when I grow up. I too still have a print that she gave me that became my favorite quote. And the day came when the risk it took to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to bloom. Thank you.
Anybody else out there? Anything else? Well, we do perhaps have some more refreshments, and I think the cooler's got plenty in it yet. Soft drinks and things, so please help yourselves. Take a look at the masks back there and pick one that works for you. And if you'd like to just sit and chat, share memories with each other, we ask you to do so. Thank you for coming today.